Imagine this, the U.S., led by President Donald Trump, considering a bold and controversial move, the annexation of Greenland, a self-governing territory of Denmark. This isn't just a political stunt, it's a move that could send shockwaves through global trade, stir up old tensions, and even threaten a trade war between the U.S. and Europe. Why would the U.S. risk such a drastic escalation? For national security, or perhaps more strategic motives, securing control over vital trade routes and critical mineral resources in the Arctic. But what does this mean for global stability, for the future of NATO, and for the economy? If the U.S. were to push forward with this move, the European Union might not sit quietly. Trade wars, tariffs, sanctions, all this could come into play, and the markets would feel the tremors. Stay with me, because this could change everything. Let's break it down. Greenland is not just some remote, frozen island. It's a strategically important piece of land with untapped resources, minerals critical to defense industries, and emerging trade routes in the Arctic. But this isn't just about resources, it's about power, influence, and security. The U.S. sees Greenland as an essential asset in a world where geopolitical rivalries are heating up. But here's the thing, Greenland is part of Denmark, and Denmark is a member of the European Union. This means any move by the U.S. to seize Greenland isn't just a diplomatic dispute with one nation, it's a direct challenge to the EU's sovereignty. If President Trump pushes forward with this plan, he's not just dealing with Denmark, he's dealing with all of Europe, a trading bloc with deep economic ties to the U.S. The repercussions could be devastating, not just politically but economically. And the question is, will the EU respond? To understand the gravity of the situation, we need to look at the historical context. Greenland has been under Danish control for centuries, but it has always been strategically significant. During the Cold War, the U.S. established a military base there, two-layer base, as part of its defense strategy to counter Soviet influence. Even today, Greenland's location makes it vital for controlling Arctic trade routes and projecting military power in the region. But here's the twist. Greenland is not a traditional colony. It has self-governing powers and its own ambitions. The current tensions stem from the U.S. eyeing Greenland not only for security reasons, but for access to its vast mineral resources, which are becoming increasingly valuable in today's global economy. But the situation is complicated. Any move by the U.S. risks disrupting delicate diplomatic relations, not just with Denmark, but with the entire European Union. So what happens when history collides with present-day geopolitics? The stakes just got higher. President Trump's rhetoric on Greenland has grown sharper, and his insistence on U.S. control over the island is pushing diplomatic talks into dangerous territory. Just recently, talks between the U.S., Denmark, and Greenland failed to reach any breakthrough. No agreement, no resolution, only heightened tension. Trump has even hinted that military action could be considered, a move that could trigger immediate backlash from the EU. And that's not all. French Finance Minister Roland Lescure issued a stark warning. If the U.S. were to take action, the consequences could be catastrophic for trade relations. The EU could impose economic sanctions or tariffs, and suddenly we're looking at a potential trade war. This is no longer just about a piece of land in the Arctic. This is about a fundamental shift in global power dynamics. The question is no longer whether the U.S. can take Greenland, it's whether the U.S. is willing to face the global consequences. And this is just the beginning. The next crisis is already unfolding. So what's driving the U.S. push for Greenland? It's not just a desire for land. It's a calculated move to secure dominance in the Arctic, where the world's trade routes are shifting. The real prize here is the minerals buried under Greenland's icy surface, rare earth elements, uranium, and other critical materials needed for defense technologies, electronics, and energy production. The U.S. has long been aware of these resources, but recent geopolitical tensions, especially with China, have made them even more vital. Control of these resources means influence in global markets and an upper hand in military defense. But there's more. The Arctic's emerging shipping lanes, unlocked by climate change, are opening up new trade routes that could reshape global commerce. The U.S. wants in on this, and Greenland's location makes it the perfect strategic foothold. But while this may seem like a savvy move for national security, it's also a delicate gamble. The U.S. could disrupt European alliances, threaten global stability, and push the world into economic chaos. And this is where things get truly unpredictable. As tensions mount, Europe isn't standing by idly. A significant shift is taking place. Europe is stepping up its presence in Greenland. European troops have arrived for a collaborative military exercise, signaling a clear message to the U.S. Greenland is a shared strategic asset, and Europe has a stake in its future. Maria Martiziute, a policy analyst at the European Policy Center, emphasized that any reinforcement of military presence in the Arctic isn't solely the U.S.'s responsibility. It's a collective allied effort. This move sends a powerful message to Washington that Europe won't tolerate any unilateral action, especially one that threatens the sovereignty of a fellow EU member state. But the stakes go even higher. European leaders are already laying down non-negotiable red lines, preparing for the worst-case scenario. The U.S. could face a unified Europe politically, economically, and militarily. If the U.S. continues down this path, it could trigger a new chapter in the geopolitical rivalry with Europe and the U.S. on opposing sides. And now we have to ask, how far is Europe willing to go? Now let's bring this home. You might be wondering, how does all of this affect you, the average person living thousands of miles away from Greenland? The answer is simple. This move could have massive economic consequences for everyone. If the U.S. triggers a trade war with Europe, the cost of goods you buy could skyrocket. Higher tariffs on imports, economic sanctions, and global market instability would ripple across industries, from technology to energy to agriculture. The tension would trickle down, touching every corner of the globe. And it's not just about prices. The global uncertainty could threaten jobs, pensions, and savings. If the U.S. and Europe go head-to-head, it could reshape how nations interact, how businesses operate, and how everyday people live. This isn't just a political game, it's a battle for economic survival. The stakes couldn't be higher. So what can we do in the face of all this uncertainty? Let's take a closer look at the global effects. The world isn't just watching this crisis unfold, it's already feeling the ripple effects. The US and EU have been intertwined in global trade for decades. A full-blown trade war could shatter the global economy, affecting countries far beyond the US and Europe. Think of the interconnectedness. China, Brazil, India, Australia, all of them have significant stakes in US-EU relations. If tariffs rise and economic sanctions are imposed, it could cause a slowdown in global trade, threatening economies that rely on the stability of these major players. And it's not just economics. This geopolitical conflict could spill over into other regions, potentially destabilizing the Middle East and Asia, where global supply chains cross paths. If Europe and the US fracture, it could embolden other powers to make their own moves. Global alliances could shift, and trade agreements could be rewritten, all while the world watches in uncertainty. Looking ahead, there are three potential futures that could emerge from this escalating crisis. First, the best-case scenario: diplomatic negotiations prevail. Both the US and Europe manage to find common ground. Greenland remains a neutral, self-governing territory, and international cooperation continues in the Arctic. The trade war is avoided, and global stability is preserved, allowing for continued economic growth across continents. In this scenario, tensions ease, and the world moves forward, united in its pursuit of prosperity and peace. Second, the middle ground. A partial agreement is reached, but at a cost. The US secures some degree of control over Greenland's resources or trade routes, but Europe retaliates with economic sanctions or tariffs. A strained relationship emerges with periodic flare-ups of tension, but no all-out trade war. The world is marked by an uneasy truce, where both sides maneuver within the boundaries of their own interests. Finally, the worst-case scenario: An all-out trade war erupts. The US and Europe clash economically with devastating consequences. Supply chains break down, markets spiral, and the global economy enters a period of uncertainty. NATO could be tested and alliances could shift. This scenario would not only impact governments and businesses, it would affect every single person around the world. We are at a crossroads. The fate of Greenland, the future of US-EU relations, and the stability of the global economy hang in the balance. Whether this escalates into a diplomatic breakthrough or spirals into a full-blown trade war will depend on the choices we make today. What's clear, however, is that this is more than just about an island in the Arctic. It's about how we as a global community navigate the complex web of politics, trade, and security. The US and Europe have built decades of cooperation, but the world is changing. National interest, economic power, and geopolitical strategy are all colliding. In this moment of uncertainty, it's up to world leaders to decide, will we find a way to collaborate, or will we be forced into conflict? The consequences are too great to ignore, and it's on all of us as citizens of this world to push for peace, dialogue, and understanding. Stay informed, stay engaged, because what happens next will shape our future.